so much for taking the time to speak with me with your busy schedule. I know that you have kind of a busy day tomorrow.
Yeah, no problem. Thank you for covering this.
Yeah. Do you want to just talk about, what you guys are planning on doing tomorrow and what your kind of expectations for the day are, I guess?
Yeah, so it's gonna be, compared to some of our events in the past, a relatively short one. We're going to, of course, it's in West Lafayette, so we're actually starting at the West Lafayette Junior Senior High School at 12:30. We have a lot of students from there who are going to gather at their track, and then they're going to start kind of the march to City Hall, where a few of the community members are going to join, so we can get more people involved in the strike, of course. And then at about 1 p.m., we expect to arrive at the John Myers pedestrian bridge. That's where the majority of the strike is going to be, where our event is planned. So the biggest thing is we're going to have a lot of student speeches. We're also going to have a lot of like kind of guest speakers, a few local politicians, and we're also going to have some music and some food, some like catering from local bakeries. So it's
Oh, cool.
because some of the students are going to have to skip lunch. And
Right.
then I think the biggest thing is at 2 p.m. we're going to have our press conference with Senator Ron Alting. And at the press conference, we plan on introducing the legislation that we've been working on for the past few months. It's actually two pieces of legislation that we plan on introducing in the Indiana, like the Indiana legislative. Yeah, sorry, two pieces of legislation that we plan on introducing next year during the legislative session in January.
Oh, wow. And I guess how old are you?
I'm 16.
You're 16? Oh, okay.
Yeah,
So you're like a junior or are you a sophomore?
I'm a junior, yes.
Oh, okay. I was thinking that you were a senior for some reason. What has it been like to sort of craft this piece of legislation with the senator?
Yeah, it's been amazing actually. I wasn't a part of the original team that met with him because he's the West Lafayette senator, but I know he was really open to introducing our legislation even before we had like a rough draft in place, and he's been really great to work with this entire time. Um, he Senator Alting has given us most of the freedom in drafting the bill, so it's really been the legislation has really mainly been written by a group of high schoolers, but we've had a lot of help and advice from other politicians throughout Indiana and from other lobbyists in Indiana, which has been really great. And I
Yeah.
think it's been quite an experience because it's not really something that you learn about in high school, how to write a bill. But I think we are, very proud of what we've written, and we do think that it has a chance to be heard in the legislative session. We've met with a few of our state senators and representatives, and as I mentioned, they've given us a lot of advice on things that we should like look over again, things that we should tweak a little bit, just the small stuff.
Mhm.
But it does still, embody our goal to try and get Indiana to address climate change and to open up the conversation of how Indiana can really start making the transition into a more into like a cleaner future.
Can you talk a little bit about this organization that you guys are a part of?
Yeah, of course. So Confront the Climate Crisis, that's what we call ourselves. We're a statewide campaign run by a bunch of high schoolers across Indiana. And we were actually founded last year, actually, on September 25th. It was founded by students at the West Lafayette Climate Strikes group. And then they wanted to make a more statewide group, so they expanded around the entire state. I'm actually from Carmel, and so they reached down to like Carmel High School's environmental work clubs, and to I think we have like people from Indianapolis, from Northwest Indiana, down in Southern Indiana, and we're mainly aimed at not just like creating this giant campaign, but also engaging like the smaller groups in the cities, in the county, like in Hamilton County, in Indiana's counties, to take local action and to, of course, to promote that the student-led actions in Indiana. And I think one of the biggest things about our campaign is we are entirely run by students, but in just this 1 year we've grown so much, and we've actually accomplished a lot already.
Are you proud of that?
I am. I joined in November, but I started getting very involved just this year, actually in January. So just in these 9 months, seeing how much we've grown, not just in like the number of students we have that are involved, but also the amount of influence we've reached. Um, it's it's I think very impressive to me.
Yeah. Um, it's interesting that you guys are doing this tomorrow because I think it was today or yesterday, a study came out that said young students and like specifically teenagers are really emotionally affected by the climate crisis. It's causing a lot of mental health, concerns and problems. Is that something that kind of resonates that you see just in your peers, kind of at school or within this group?
Yeah, I think that one of the reasons why, not just, in Indiana, why there are more like youth-led climate campaigns, honestly, across the world, just in these past few years, is because climate change is an issue that's hard to perceive if you're really focused on the present. But as like students who are always looking to, like the future, like college, but also beyond that, I think it's a very worrying issue. Um, I think that a lot of people that get involved start getting involved because they're anxious about the climate crisis and they want to, they want to feel like they're doing something. And we are, I don't, oh, that sounded a bit like mean, like we
Oh
are
no,
doing
that's fine.
something. Yeah, I think, yeah, part of it is, I know after I joined Confront the Climate Crisis, I've had friends that came up to me and was like, how can I, help out? How can I volunteer? And I think that's also why, you know, just like the smaller stuff at local levels, like park cleanups and stuff, a lot of students like to volunteer for those things because it's direct action that you can take. While it's not necessarily fighting, the global problem of climate change, it's taking these smaller steps that you can start to relieve your anxiousness and, start to look forward to what is the root of the problem and how can we solve it.
What do you think some steps are in Indiana that we really need to do to confront the climate crisis? And how are you planning on addressing this in your legislation, I guess?
Yeah, thank you for that question. Actually, one of the things I think we've mentioned actually this summer, a few of us from Confront the Climate Crisis, we went to DC as like a fun trip. But when we were there, we had the chance to meet with a few of our like federal politicians in Indiana, which was an amazing experience. And they gave us some advice, and it was great to talk to them. And I remember, I can't remember, one of the things Senator Young's staff mentioned was that Indiana's economy is like still heavily based on like fossil fuels and like coal mining. And one of the steps I think that Indiana can take is I think it's complicated actually because it's a big issue. You don't want to affect the economic development of Indiana because agriculture, which will be affected by climate change, but also the fossil fuel industry, which brings a lot of revenue into Indiana. You don't want to just switch to renewable energies and leave all these people without jobs because that's honestly more detrimental right now. But what our legislation is hoping to do is that we'll get Indiana's legislators to acknowledge that climate change is an issue. And as it is an issue, they'll start to take steps to mitigate it. And our legislation is not really, it's not focused yet on the exact solutions they'll be taking. It's focused on them having to open up the conversation, on having them reach out to a lot of different perspectives in Indiana. Like, for example, reaching out to, the scientists, reaching out to coal miners, reaching out to business interests, and having them talk about the future they want to see and how they think they can fight against climate change. Because it's in I think as students, we see an image of climate change focused heavily on our future, but we also do acknowledge that, if we just switch straight to renewable energy right now, there's not really a great sector for that in our economy. So
Mhm.
what we want to do is we want, the adults, we want the legislators and the people whose jobs will be affected to have the conversation so that one day we can make this transition
Mm.
into a more like a cleaner economy and fighting against like the like fossil fuel energy.
Um, does it feel sort of, you're meeting with legislators and have some people willing to work with you. Was that sort of validating in a way? I mean, what was that experience kind of like? Of like, okay, like at least we have, even if it's one person, like they're kind of hearing us, you know?
I think for me at least it definitely was because um while I understand that youth of course have a loud voice and they have a lot of power to make change. I think there's a difference between, having these climate strikes, having these marches in front of the state house to tell them what we want to hear, and then actually getting to sit down with them in a room and having to talk to them, not just yelling outside the state house hoping they hear us. And I think it's really, really great that they've been willing to hear us out and that they've been willing to also talk to us and give us advice because it means that they really are taking us seriously. I think it's been really validating, and I think it's also been not surprising in a way. It's been, I feel like it's something that should be more normalized because, when you sit down and talk with your legislator, at first it seems kind of nerve-wracking, but honestly, like we're all people, and even though, they are adults, they are older, and they have like more wisdom, more perspectives, it's really still feels kind of like a conversation, and it still feels like we're hearing them and they're hearing us. So I think it really has been great.
And this is part of, I mean, and correct me if I'm wrong, and I don't know like all the details yet, but this is part of a larger global movement, correct? And that's why it's happening tomorrow, or did it happen to coincide? Like, what's the timing on that?
Yeah. We did see that like the Fridays for Future Global movement, their global strike day was tomorrow, and it actually it was kind of a coincidence. Like we kind of did plan it because we wanted the most impact on this day when we knew a lot of people would be striking. But Confront the Climate Crisis is solely like Indiana focused. We're not actually we've like made connections with activists from like the wider United States and from around the world, but we were like built on our own, so we're not actually connected to. Wait, that doesn't make sense. We're not actually like a part of the larger global group.
Right,
But
right.
yeah, part of it was that the September strike from 2019 and 2020, it kind of aligns with this date, and we wanted to keep up the September strike. Also, we wanted to like announce our legislation before the January session starts, and also our 1 year anniversary is September 25th, so it was kind of like a nice little, hey, look, we're still here.
Yeah. So what does the path now for you guys look like from now to January then?
Yeah, so from now to January with our legislation, like with most legislations, it's probably still going to change a bit. What we're going to be introducing tomorrow is our final draft, but it may change a bit more. And I think our biggest thing is we want to just try and get a lot of community support for it so that when we can get it introduced in January, there can already be a lot of talk about our bill, about our legislation. So we're going to be, just trying to do more like outreach on social media and just, in our local cities, try to get more people talking about Confront the Climate Crisis, about the legislation we'll be introducing. We do also plan on having another event in January at the State House, like a mini lobbying event, but really just an event to say, like, the legislative session has started, we have this bill, we're going to introduce it. Well, is it going to be heard? Is it going to be voted on? Is it going to be, seen by the environmental committee?
Yeah. Okay, well, I think that's all I have for you. Unless, is there anything that, I really missed in my questions to you that you would like to kind of address now, or something you thought that we would talk about that I didn't ask about?
I don't think so. Thank you so much.
Okay.